I sat at our family dinner table on my 28th birthday. No cake, no presents, no celebration. My parents had just announced they were canceling my birthday party to fund my younger sister Madison's European vacation. The family acted like this sacrifice was normal, expected. I had swallowed this treatment my whole life, always coming second to Madison's dreams. Then my phone rang during dinner. My assistant's voice cut through the tension. "Boss, your private jet is ready for the morning departure to Singapore." My father's fork clatters to his plate. The silence that followed could have been cut with a knife. My mother's face froze mid-chew, her eyes darting between my phone and me like she'd just witnessed something impossible. Madison stopped twirling her pasta, her mouth slightly open in confusion. Dad just stared, his fork still dangling from his fingers. "Debbie, who was that?" Mom asked slowly, her voice tight with the kind of controlled curiosity that meant trouble. I set my phone face down on the table, buying myself a moment to think. The irony wasn't lost on me that this conversation was happening on my birthday, the birthday they'd just dismissed like it meant nothing, the birthday they'd traded away for Madison's latest whim. "That was Sarah, my assistant," I said calmly, cutting into the dry chicken Mom had prepared without any of the care she put into Madison's favorite meals. "Assistant?" Madison's voice pitched higher. "Since when do you have an assistant? And what's this about a private jet?" 28 years of being the overlooked daughter came flooding back. I remembered being 7 years old, watching my parents drain my college fund to pay for Madison's private ballet academy. They'd sat me down in this same dining room and explained that Madison had special talent that needed nurturing. I was smart enough for public school, they said. Smart enough to figure things out on my own. I remembered working 3 jobs during high school, while Madison got $50 a week allowance. I remembered eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch, while Madison complained about the gourmet meals Mom packed for her. I remembered applying for scholarships in secret, because asking my parents for tuition money seemed as pointless as asking for the moon. "You remember when I graduated from state with my computer science degree?" I asked, looking around the table at 3 faces that suddenly seemed like strangers. "Of course," Dad said, though his expression suggested he was struggling to recall the details. "You got that job at the tech company downtown." "That startup, yes. Wilson Tech Solutions." I took a sip of water, watching Madison's eyes narrow with suspicion. "I worked there for 2 years before I quit to start my own company." "Your own company?" Mom laughed, but it sounded forced. "Honey, you never mentioned starting a business." "I mentioned it plenty. You were all busy with Madison's dance competitions and her college applications and her first apartment deposit that I co-signed because her credit was terrible." Each memory stung as I spoke it aloud. "I stopped trying to share my life with you, because none of you ever asked. The truth was, I'd given up trying to connect with my family years ago. Every achievement I'd earned felt hollow when I came home to share it and found them planning Madison's next adventure. Every milestone I reached was met with polite nods and quick subject changes back to whatever crisis Madison was navigating that week. "Debbie, that's not fair," Madison said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "We care about your job." "My job?" I almost laughed. "Madison, do you even know what I do for a living?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Mom and Dad exchanged glances across the table. "You work with computers," Dad offered weakly. "I build artificial intelligence systems for healthcare providers. My company develops software that helps doctors diagnose diseases faster and more accurately. We've saved thousands of lives over the past 3 years." The weight of those words settled over the table. 3 years. For 3 years, I'd been running a company that was changing people's lives, and my own family had reduced it to working with computers. My phone rang again. Sarah's number flashed on the screen. "I need to take this," I said, answering before anyone could protest. "Sarah, what's the status on the Singapore acquisition?" "Everything's finalized, boss. The contracts are signed and we're purchasing MedTech Solutions for $12.5 million. The board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. Singapore time tomorrow. Your jet's fueled and ready at the private terminal." I watched my family's faces transform as Sarah's words carried clearly through the phone's speaker. Mom's face went white. Dad's mouth fell open. Madison looked like she'd been slapped. Perfect. Make sure the legal team has those patent documents ready for review. And Sarah? Cancel my weekend plans. This acquisition is going to require my full attention. Of course, boss. Oh, and the Forbes interview about the company's expansion into Southeast Asia is confirmed for next week. They're particularly interested in discussing how you built a $50 million company from your college dorm room. $50 million. The number hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Madison's face went through several shades of red before settling on a splotchy purple. Mom gripped her water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Dad looked like he was having trouble breathing. Thank you, Sarah. We'll discuss the media strategy when I'm back from Singapore. I hung up and set the phone down gently. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. $50 million? Madison's voice was barely a whisper. The company's valuation, yes. We've grown quite a bit since I started it with the $10,000 I saved from working at the campus coffee shop and tutoring freshmen in calculus. And you never told us? Mom's voice cracked. Your own family? I looked at each of them, these people who'd raised me but never really seen me. When exactly should I have told you? When you were helping Madison move into her third apartment this year? When you were co-signing her car loan because her credit was destroyed from all those unpaid credit cards? Or maybe tonight, when you canceled my birthday to fund her European vacation? That's different, Madison said quickly. I've been going through a hard time with my breakup. Your breakup with James? The guy you dated for 3 months? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Madison, you've had 17 different boyfriends since high school. Every breakup is the end of the world. Every new relationship is your soulmate. And every time, Mom and Dad drop everything to comfort you and finance whatever you need to heal. Dad finally found his voice. Debbie, we had no idea about your business. If you'd told us, if I'd told you, what would have changed? Would you have suddenly been interested in my life? Would you have asked about my work instead of immediately launching into Madison's latest drama? Would you have remembered my birthday without me reminding you? The questions hung heavy in the air. I could see the realizations dawning on their faces, the uncomfortable recognition of patterns they'd never noticed before. I wanted to see if you could love me for who I was, not what I could provide, I continued. I wanted to know if my family would value me as a person, not as a backup plan or a safety net. Tonight, I got my answer. Madison's face had gone from purple to pale. Debbie, you're being dramatic. We love you. You love the idea of me. You love having a responsible daughter who never causes problems. You love that I'm predictable and stable, and that you never have to worry about me. But you don't actually know me at all. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Singapore delegation is requesting dinner meeting tonight at 8 p.m. Shall I arrange the conference call? I typed back quickly. Set it up. Family dinner ending soon. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, having the most honest conversation with my family that we'd had in years, and I had international business deals demanding my attention. The life they knew nothing about was calling me away from them once again. I have a conference call with Singapore in 20 minutes, I said, standing from the table. Madison, enjoy your European vacation. Mom, Dad. I hope $10,000 is worth what you've lost tonight. But as I walked toward the stairs, Madison's voice stopped me cold. I know about your company, Debbie. I've known for months. I turned around slowly, something cold settling in my stomach. What did you say? Madison's face was different now. The confusion was gone, replaced by something calculating and mean that I'd seen glimpses of throughout our childhood but had always chosen to ignore. I said I've known about your precious company for months. Did you really think you could keep something like that secret in a town this small? The family dinner had just taken a turn I never could have anticipated, and I had the distinct feeling that the evening was far from over. Madison stood up from the table, her posture changing completely. Gone was the confused little sister act, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Her smile was sharp and cold, nothing like the sweet expression she usually wore. You want to know how I found out? She asked. tilting her head in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of a predator toying with its prey. Remember when you had me house sit for you 3 months ago while you were on that work trip to Boston? My blood ran cold. I'd been in Boston meeting with venture capitalists about expanding into New England. It had been a crucial business trip, and Madison had offered to watch my place, water my plants, and collect my mail. I'd thought it was sweet of her to help. I got curious about what kind of job lets someone afford a 4-bedroom house in Maple Heights at 28, so I did some digging. Madison's voice was conversational, but there was an edge to it that made my skin crawl. Did you know you left your laptop open that weekend? Your email was right there on the screen. You went through my computer? The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I went through everything, Debbie. Your emails, your financial records, your business plans. I even found those Forbes articles about young entrepreneurs to watch that featured your company. Quite the little empire you've built. Mom and Dad sat frozen at the table, watching this exchange like spectators at a tennis match they didn't understand. Madison, why would you do that? Mom's voice was horrified. Because I wanted to know why perfect Debbie was so perfect, Madison snapped. Do you have any idea what it's like being her sister? Saint Debbie, who never needs anything, never asks for help, never causes any trouble. I spent my whole life wondering what was wrong with me, that I couldn't be more like her. So you violated my privacy, I said, my voice deadly quiet. I found out the truth. That you've been lying to us for 3 years. That you've been sitting on a fortune while watching Mom and Dad struggle to help me pay my bills. That you've been playing some sick game, pretending to be the martyred daughter while secretly judging us all. The accusations came fast and sharp, but there was something else in Madison's voice. Something that sounded almost like relief, as if she'd been carrying this secret resentment for months and was finally free to let it out. You planned this, I said, the pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. The European vacation, the timing, asking them to cancel my birthday. You planned all of it. Madison's smile widened. Guilty as charged. I wanted to see how far Mom and Dad would go to choose me over you, even when you're rich enough to buy and sell this entire neighborhood. Turns out, pretty far. Madison, what are you saying? Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm saying I manipulated you. Both of you. I told you this European trip was my dream, that I needed it to heal from my breakup, that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I laid it on thick, and you ate it up like you always do. Mom's face crumpled. You lied to us? I've been lying to you for years, Mom. About everything. My job situation, my relationship drama, my financial problems. And you know what? You made it easy because you wanted to believe the lies. It was easier to baby me than to make me grow up. The cruelty in Madison's voice was breathtaking. I'd seen her manipulate situations before, but I'd never witnessed her acknowledge it so openly, so coldly. But the best part, Madison continued, her eyes locked on mine, was knowing that even with all your money, even with your success, they still chose me. They still picked poor little Madison over their millionaire daughter. That had to sting. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do this to our family? Because you left me behind. Madison's composure cracked, and years of buried resentment came pouring out. You got out, Debbie. You built this amazing life and you didn't take me with you. You didn't even tell me about it. You just watched me struggle and fail over and over again while you sat on your pile of money feeling superior. I would have helped you if you'd asked. If you'd shown any interest in changing your life instead of just complaining about it. Would you? Really? Or would you have given me some lecture about responsibility and hard work while secretly thinking I was just another family disappointment? Before I could answer, Madison dropped her next bomb. Speaking of disappointments, I should probably mention that I've been dating James again. You remember James, right? Your ex-boyfriend from college? The one who broke your heart senior year? The room started spinning. James Morrison, pre-med student, captain of the lacrosse team, the first man I'd ever loved. He'd dumped me 2 weeks before graduation for a sorority president who better fit his image for medical school. It had devastated me at the time, though I'd moved on years ago. You're lying, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew she wasn't. We ran into each other at a coffee shop 6 months ago. Started talking, one thing led to another. He's finishing his residency now, pediatric surgery. Very impressive. We've been keeping it quiet because, well, I wasn't sure how you'd react. 6 months? The timeline made me sick. Madison had been sleeping with my ex-boyfriend for half a year, while pretending to be the supportive sister who house-sat and watered my plants. He asks about you sometimes, Madison said with fake sweetness. Wonders how you're doing, if you ever think about him. I tell him you're probably too busy with work to think about relationships. I don't mention the millions of dollars, of course. That would just complicate things. Mom finally found her voice. Madison, stop this. Stop it right now. Why should I stop? We're finally being honest with each other. Isn't this what family bonding looks like? No more secrets, no more lies? This isn't bonding, Dad said, his voice shaking with anger. This is cruelty. Is it cruel to point out that you've spent 28 years treating your daughters differently? Is it cruel to mention that you never once asked Debbie what she wanted for her birthday? Just assumed she'd be fine with whatever was left over after you'd taken care of me? Madison was spiraling now, her voice getting higher and more frantic. Is it cruel to wonder why the daughter who never asked for anything had to build her success in secret, while the daughter who asked for everything got handed whatever she wanted? Because you made it impossible to share anything with this family, I said quietly. Every conversation became about you. Every achievement I had was overshadowed by your latest crisis. I stopped talking about my life because there was never any room for it. Boo-hoo, Debbie. Poor little rich girl who felt ignored. I wasn't rich then, Madison. I was working 60-hour weeks and living on ramen noodles and whatever free food I could find at networking events. I was staying up until 3 in the morning writing code and then getting up at 6 to work my day job. I was building something from nothing while you were living off credit cards that Mom and Dad had to pay off. And now you're punishing us for it. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself from a family that only values me when they need something from me. Madison's laugh was bitter. Well, get ready to be needed, sister, because I haven't told you the best part yet. She placed both hands on her stomach with a theatrical gesture that made my heart sink. I'm pregnant with James's baby. Congratulations, you're going to be an aunt. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face went white. Dad's chair scraped against the floor as he pushed back from the table, and I felt something inside me break that I didn't even know was still whole. Pregnant, I repeated numbly. 8 weeks along. James doesn't know yet, but when I tell him, I'm sure he'll want to do the right thing. Medical residents don't make much money, though. We're going to need family support. The manipulation was so blatant, so calculated, that it took my breath away. Madison had orchestrated this entire evening, from the canceled birthday to the European vacation demand to this final devastating revelation. She'd turned our family dinner into a twisted performance with herself as the star and the rest of us as her unwilling audience. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house. All of you. Get out right now. Debbie, this is Mom and Dad's house, Madison said with false confusion. No, Madison. This is my house. I bought it for them 2 years ago when Dad's construction business was failing, and they were 3 months behind on mortgage payments. I've been paying the utilities, the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance, and the maintenance costs ever since. This is my house, and I want you out of it. The color drained from Madison's face. You're lying. Sarah handles all the paperwork. Would you like me to call her and have her email you the deed? But even as I said the words, I realized that Madison wasn't finished with her revelations. Her smile was different now, desperate and mean, in a way that made my skin crawl. Well, since we're sharing family secrets, she said, pulling out her phone, maybe Mom and Dad should know about the little business proposal I've been working on. My blood went cold as Madison scrolled through her emails with theatrical slowness. Turns out, Debbie, there are a lot of people very interested in learning about your company's upcoming projects. Industrial competitors, investment firms, even some overseas buyers who are very curious about your artificial intelligence technology. Madison, what are you talking about? Mom's voice was strangled. I'm talking about capitalism, Mom. Supply and demand. I have information that people want to buy, and Debbie has been too selfish to share her success with her family. So I found another way to benefit from her hard work. The room was spinning. You've been selling company secrets? I prefer to think of it as freelance consulting. Do you have any idea how much people will pay for insider information about a $50 million tech company? Especially one that's about to expand internationally? That's corporate espionage, Madison. That's a federal crime. Only if someone can prove I had unauthorized access to confidential information. But I was house-sitting for my sister. Anything I saw in her home was just family business, right? I stared at this person who shared my DNA, who I'd grown up with, who I'd defended and supported and loved despite everything. She'd taken my trust, my privacy, my history, and my business secrets, and she'd turned all of it into weapons against me. But the worst part was the look in her eyes. There was no guilt there, no shame, no recognition of how deeply she'd betrayed me. There was only a cold satisfaction and the desperate hunger of someone who'd finally found a way to hurt the person she'd been resenting for years. I think, Madison said, her voice deadly quiet, it's time this family started being more honest about how much we really owe each other. Before I could fully process Madison's threat about corporate espionage, Dad's face crumpled completely. His hands started shaking, and he buried his face in his palms. Stop, he whispered. Just stop. Both of you. Mom reached across the table to touch his shoulder. Robert, what's wrong? We can't do this anymore, Carol. We can't keep pretending. Dad's voice was muffled by his hands, but the defeat in it was crystal clear. She's going to find out anyway. Find out what? I asked. Though I was beginning to suspect I didn't want to know. Dad lifted his head, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. My father, who'd built houses with his bare hands for 30 years, who'd never shown weakness in front of his daughters, looked completely broken. I lost my job 6 months ago, he said quietly. Davidson Construction let me go when the Miller project fell through. Said they couldn't afford to keep senior guys on payroll when there wasn't enough work. Dad, why didn't you tell us? Even Madison looked shaken by this revelation. Because I was supposed to be the provider, Dad said, his voice thick with shame. I was supposed to take care of my family. How do you tell your daughters that their father is a failure? Mom's face was streaked with tears now. It's not just his job, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been having some health problems. My heart stopped. What kind of health problems? Breast cancer. Stage 2. I finished chemotherapy 2 months ago. The world tilted sideways. Mom, what? When? How long have you known? I was diagnosed 8 months ago. The medical bills. Mom's voice broke. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket costs have been enormous. The surgery, the chemo, the radiation, the medications, we've spent over $80,000. And we didn't want to worry you girls, Dad added quickly. You both have your own lives, your own problems. We thought we could handle it ourselves. I stared at my parents, these people I'd thought I knew, and realized how much they'd been hiding. While I'd been resentful about feeling ignored, they'd been fighting cancer and unemployment in silence. We refinanced the house, Dad continued, twice. We liquidated our retirement savings. We sold Mom's car and my tools. We've done everything we could think of. The house is 3 months behind on mortgage payments, Mom said, her voice hollow. The bank sent a foreclosure notice last week. Madison's face had gone completely white. Foreclosure? You're going to lose the house? We've been trying to figure out how to ask you for help, Debbie, Dad said, looking at me with desperate eyes. We knew about your success. We've known for months. We see the checks you send for the utilities and the property taxes. We know you bought the house to help us. But we were too proud to ask directly, Mom added. We thought maybe if we could find a way to bring it up naturally. Maybe if we could make it seem like you were offering instead of us begging. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. The European vacation. You weren't choosing Madison over me. You were setting up an excuse to ask me for money. We thought if we could create a situation where we obviously needed financial help, you might offer to step in, Dad said miserably. We thought maybe you'd say something like, "Don't worry about Madison's trip, I'll take care of it," and then we could mention the other problems. We never meant for it to become this whole thing about canceling your birthday, Mom said quickly. We just didn't know how else to bring it up. We've been too ashamed to tell you the truth. Madison was staring at them like she'd never seen them before. You've been lying to me too? About the money for Europe? We don't have money for Europe, sweetheart, Dad said gently. We don't have money for anything. We've been buying groceries with credit cards for 2 months. And my credit cards? Madison's voice was small. The ones you said you'd help me pay off? Mom and Dad exchanged glances. We can't afford to pay them, Mom said. We've been making minimum payments when we can. But Madison, you owe almost $15,000 across 4 different cards. I thought you were handling it, Madison said, her voice getting higher. You said you'd take care of it. You said not to worry about it. We said we'd help you figure it out, Dad corrected gently. But honey, we can't fix financial problems with money we don't have. I watched Madison's face as the reality of the situation hit her. Her parents weren't wealthy safety nets who could bail her out indefinitely. They were struggling. Scared people who'd been trying to protect their daughters from the truth while their whole world fell apart. The pregnancy? I said suddenly, looking at Madison. Are you really pregnant? Madison's face flushed red. Yes. Maybe. I don't know. You don't know? I took a test. It was positive, but I haven't been to a doctor yet. When was your last period? I don't know, Debbie. I don't keep track of that stuff. Mom leaned forward. Madison, if you're pregnant, you need prenatal care immediately. That's not something you can put off. With what money? Madison's voice cracked. You just told me you can't afford groceries. How am I supposed to pay for doctor visits and prenatal vitamins and all that stuff? The helplessness in her voice was genuine. And for the first time in years, I saw my little sister instead of the manipulative woman who'd been tearing our family apart all evening. And James? I asked quietly. Madison's face crumpled. I lied about that too. We went on 3 dates 6 months ago. I kept texting him and calling him, but he said he wasn't ready for anything serious. He's been ignoring me for weeks. So he doesn't know about the pregnancy? There might not be a pregnancy, Madison whispered. I might have just been late because I've been stressed about money. But I wanted there to be something, some reason for you to care about me the way Mom and Dad care about me. Madison, Mom said softly, we don't love you more than Debbie. We worry about you more because you seem to need more help. But that doesn't mean we love you more. It feels like you do, Madison said, tears streaming down her face. Debbie's always been the smart one, the responsible one, the one who has everything figured out. I'm the screw-up who can't keep a job, or pay her bills, or maintain a relationship. Of course you love her more. Dad reached across the table to take Madison's hand. Sweetheart, we love you both differently because you're different people, but we don't love one of you more than the other. Then why did Debbie have to build her company in secret? Madison asked. Why didn't she feel like she could share her success with us? The question hung in the air. And I realized that my parents were looking at me with the same wounded confusion that had been in Madison's eyes all evening. Because every time I tried to talk about my life, the conversation became about Madison, I said quietly. Because when I got my first promotion, you spent dinner talking about Madison's audition for the community theater. Because when I graduated summa cum laude, we left my graduation early so Madison wouldn't be late for her date. Because when I bought my first apartment, you asked if Madison could borrow my moving boxes. We didn't realize, Mom said, her voice thick with guilt. I know you didn't. That's what made it so painful. It wasn't malicious. It was just automatic. Madison's needs always seemed more urgent than mine because I never made them urgent. I handled my own problems instead of making them everyone else's crisis. So you stopped sharing your problems with us, Dad said, understanding dawning in his eyes. I stopped sharing anything with you. Problems, successes, fears, dreams. I built my life separately because there never seemed to be room for it in this family. My phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. Boss, Singapore is asking about the timeline for patent transfers. Should I push the call back? I looked at my family, these broken, struggling people who'd been living separate lives under the same roof for years. Dad unemployed and ashamed, Mom fighting cancer in secret, Madison drowning in debt and desperate for attention. All of them hiding their pain from each other, all of them suffering alone. I have to take this call, I said, standing from the table. But we're not done with this conversation. As I headed for the stairs, Dad's voice stopped me. Debbie, there's one more thing you need to know. I turned back, dreading what other revelation was coming. When we refinanced the house the second time, we needed a cosigner. We used some old documents that had your name on them from when you first helped us buy the place, we thought. We hoped we'd be able to get caught up on payments before you ever found out. My blood went cold. What are you saying? We're saying that legally, according to the bank, you're responsible for the mortgage debt, Mom said, her voice barely audible. If we can't make the payments, they'll come after you. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not just Madison, but my own parents had manipulated my finances without my knowledge or consent. How much? I asked quietly. $240,000, Dad whispered. I stared at them all, these people I'd loved and trusted and tried to protect, and realized that every single one of them had found a way to use my success against me. Madison had tried to sell my business secrets. My parents had legally committed me to a debt I'd never agreed to take on. But before I could fully process the magnitude of what they'd done, my phone rang. Not Sarah this time, a number I didn't recognize. Debbie Chen? The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. This is Debbie. This is Agent Martinez with the FBI's Economic Crimes Unit. We need to talk to you about some suspicious activity involving your company's intellectual property. Are you available for a conversation this evening? The room started spinning as I realized that Madison's threats about selling company secrets might not have been just threats after all. Agent Martinez, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos erupting around me. I'm available to talk. What kind of suspicious activity are we discussing? We've been monitoring some unusual network activity involving attempts to access your company's secure servers. We also have reports of someone attempting to sell proprietary information about your artificial intelligence algorithms to overseas buyers. I looked directly at Madison, whose face had gone pale as she realized the FBI was on the other end of my phone call. I may have some relevant information for your investigation. Are you able to meet tonight? We have agents in your area. Would it be possible for us to come to your location for an initial interview? Absolutely. I'm at 412 Maple Street. How soon can you be here? 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at my family. Madison, you might want to call a lawyer. What? Mom's voice was shrill. Why does she need a lawyer? Because selling proprietary business information to competitors is a federal crime. And the FBI just told me they're investigating suspicious activity around my company's intellectual property. Madison was shaking now, her bravado from earlier completely gone. Debbie, I didn't actually sell anything. I talked to some people. I made some inquiries. You accessed my secure files without authorization. You contacted competitors about confidential information. Even if no money changed hands, you've committed corporate espionage. Before anyone could respond, car headlights swept across the front windows. But it wasn't the FBI. A sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway, followed by a second car. Who's that? Dad asked nervously. That would be Sarah and my legal team, I said, checking my phone. Sarah had texted, saw the FBI alert on the security monitoring system, en route with lawyers and PR team. Do not say anything until we arrive. The doorbell rang, and I went to answer it. Sarah stood on the front porch with 3 people I recognized as my company's legal counsel and crisis management team. Boss, are you okay? Sarah asked, her professional demeanor tinged with genuine concern. I'm fine. My family is about to get an education in the reality of my business operations. I led them into the living room, where my parents and Madison sat looking like deer in headlights. Sarah took one look at the scene and immediately shifted into crisis management mode. Mr. and Mrs. Chen. I'm Sarah Williams, Debbie's executive assistant. These are our attorneys. Michael Chen, no relation, and Lisa Rodriguez, and our crisis communications specialist, David Kim. Attorneys? Mom's voice was faint. Why do we need attorneys? Because your daughter may be facing federal charges for corporate espionage, Michael said bluntly. And depending on what information she accessed and shared, this could impact the entire company. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. Boss, before the FBI gets here, there are some things you need to know. The security breach we detected last week has been traced back to your home network. Someone with physical access to your systems downloaded confidential files including client lists, proprietary algorithms, and details about the Singapore acquisition. How much damage are we talking about? I asked. Potentially catastrophic, Lisa said grimly. If this information reaches our competitors before we can implement damage control measures, we could lose the Singapore deal, face lawsuits from existing clients, and see our valuation drop by 60 to 70%. That's $30 to $35 million, David added for my family's benefit. Madison made a choking sound. I didn't know it was that serious. I thought it was just business information. There is no just business information when you're dealing with proprietary technology, Michael said coldly. What you've done could destroy a company that employs over 200 people. Sarah's tablet chimed with an alert. The FBI is here, she announced. 2 agents in dark suits approached the front door. I let them in and led them to the living room, which was now crowded with family, lawyers, and federal investigators. Agent Martinez, I said, shaking hands with a tall woman with sharp eyes. This is Agent Cooper, she added, indicating her partner. Miss Chen, thank you for making time for us tonight. We understand you may have information relevant to our investigation into unauthorized access to your company's proprietary systems. I do. I believe my sister Madison has been accessing my business files without authorization and making contact with potential buyers for that information. Agent Martinez pulled out a recorder. With your permission, we'd like to record this conversation. Miss Madison Chen, you have the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. Am I under arrest? Madison's voice was barely a whisper. Not at this time, but you are a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation. Lisa stepped forward. Agent Martinez, I'm representing Miss Madison Chen in this matter. My client will cooperate fully with your investigation. Over the next hour, the full scope of Madison's activities became clear. She'd accessed my computer multiple times over several months, not just during the weekend I'd asked her to house sit. She'd photographed documents, copied files to a flash drive, and reached out to 3 different companies expressing interest in providing insider information about my business operations. The good news, Agent Cooper said, is that we don't believe any sensitive information actually changed hands. Our investigation suggests your sister was more interested in the attention and the fantasy of making money than in actually following through with a sale. The bad news, Agent Martinez added, is that attempted corporate espionage is still a serious crime, even if no transaction was completed. As the FBI finished their initial questioning and prepared to leave, Sarah pulled me aside. Boss, there's something else you need to know. The media has gotten wind of this story. What media? Local news, business journals, and social media. Someone called in a tip about FBI agents at the home of a prominent tech CEO. Your private life is about to become very public. As if on cue, bright lights flooded the front windows as a news van pulled up outside. Then another. Within minutes, there were reporters on my parents' front lawn, cameras pointed at the house, journalists shouting questions through the windows. Miss Chen, can you comment on the FBI investigation? Is it true your company is involved in corporate espionage? What's your response to allegations of security breaches? David immediately went into action, coordinating with Sarah to manage the crisis. We need to get ahead of this story, he said. If we don't control the narrative, speculation will destroy the company's reputation. What kind of narrative control are we talking about? Dad asked, looking overwhelmed by the circus his living room had become. We tell the truth, I said firmly. My company was the victim of unauthorized access by a family member who was struggling with personal issues. We cooperated fully with law enforcement, and have implemented additional security measures to prevent future incidents. That's a start, David said. But we need to address the broader questions about your personal life and your relationship with your family. The business community is going to want to know why you kept your success secret from your own parents. I looked around the room at my family, my employees, and the federal agents who were documenting what might be the worst night of our lives. 3 hours ago, I'd been sitting at a dinner table upset about a canceled birthday party. Now I was dealing with corporate espionage, federal investigations, media attention, and the complete dissolution of my family's trust. But as overwhelming as it was, there was also something liberating about having everything out in the open. No more secrets, no more pretending, no more carefully managing everyone else's feelings while ignoring my own. You know what? I said, looking directly at David. Let's hold a press conference tomorrow morning. I want to tell the whole story. The family dynamics, the business success, the security breach, all of it. Boss, are you sure that's wise? Sarah asked. Your private life will be completely exposed. My private life is already exposed, I said, gesturing toward the window where camera flashes were still going off. At least this way, I get to tell my own story instead of letting others tell it for me. Agent Martinez finished packing up her equipment. Miss Chen, we'll be in touch as the investigation continues. Miss Madison Chen, you'll need to remain available for further questioning. As the FBI agents left, Sarah coordinated with the security team to manage the media presence outside. Michael and Lisa began preparing legal strategies for both the criminal investigation and potential civil actions. David started drafting press statements and planning the media response. And in the middle of all this professional crisis management, my family sat in stunned silence, watching their quiet suburban home transform into the center of a very public scandal. Debbie, Mom said quietly, we're so sorry. We never meant for any of this to happen. I looked at my parents, these people who'd raised me and loved me in their imperfect way, and realized that tonight had changed everything between us. Not just because of what had happened, but because of what had been revealed about who we really were underneath all the pretending. I know you didn't, I said. But we can't go back to the way things were. After tonight, everything has to be different. Madison was crying softly, the weight of what she'd done finally sinking in. I've ruined everything, haven't I? You've certainly complicated things, I said honestly. But Madison, you've also forced us to finally be honest with each other. Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Sarah approached with her tablet. Boss, I hate to interrupt, but Singapore is getting nervous about the media coverage. They want assurance that this won't impact the acquisition. Set up a video conference for first thing tomorrow morning, I said. Before the press conference. We need to reassure our international partners that this is a personal matter, not a business vulnerability. And the board meeting? Postpone it until next week. We need time to assess the full impact of tonight's events before we make any major business decisions. As Sarah coordinated the business response to our family crisis, I realized that everything I'd built over the past 3 years was now at risk because I'd tried to maintain boundaries between my professional and personal life. The success I'd kept secret to protect myself had become a weapon that could destroy everything I'd worked for. But looking around at this chaotic scene, FBI agents, lawyers, crisis managers, reporters, and my broken family all crowded into my parents' modest living room, I also realized that I was finally free from the exhausting burden of living 2 separate lives. For better or worse, Debbie the daughter and Debbie the CEO were about to become the same person. And tomorrow, the whole world would know exactly who that person was. The next morning arrived with news vans still parked outside and my phone buzzing with interview requests from every major business publication in the country. Sarah had set up a temporary command center in my parents' dining room, coordinating damage control while I prepared for the most important conversations of my life. Singapore conference call in 10 minutes, Sarah announced, handing me coffee and a stack of financial reports. They want reassurances about corporate stability and data security. The call went better than expected. Our Singapore partners were actually impressed by our swift response to the security breach and our transparency about the situation. This kind of crisis management gives us more confidence in your leadership, Not less, their CEO told me. You're handling a personal betrayal with remarkable professionalism. As I hung up from Singapore, Madison appeared in the doorway. She looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Debbie, can we talk? Privately? I looked at Sarah, who nodded and stepped out to give us space. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, Madison began, her voice shaky. But I need you to understand that I never meant for it to go this far. Then help me understand, Madison. Help me understand how you thought accessing my private business files was acceptable. I was desperate, she said, sinking into a chair. Do you know what it's like being your sister? Everyone always talks about how proud Mom and Dad must be of smart, successful Debbie. Teachers, neighbors, family, friends, everyone. And then they look at me like they're wondering what went wrong. So you decided to sabotage my business? I decided to prove that I could be smart too. That I could find opportunities and make money, and be worth something. Madison's voice broke. When I found those files on your computer, I thought maybe I could use the information to start my own consulting business, help other companies understand market trends or something. By stealing my proprietary research, I convinced myself it wasn't really stealing because we're family. I thought maybe you'd even be proud of me for being entrepreneurial. I stared at her, this person I'd shared a childhood with, and realized how completely we'd failed to understand each other. Madison, if you'd asked me for help starting a business, I would have helped you. If you'd told me you were struggling financially, I would have helped you. If you'd said you wanted to feel useful and successful, I would have found ways for you to contribute to my company legitimately. Would you? Really? Or would you have given me some entry-level job out of pity and watched me fail at that too? The question hung between us, and I realized she wasn't entirely wrong to doubt me. I had been protecting myself from my family's problems for so long that I probably wouldn't have offered real partnership or genuine opportunity. I don't know, I said honestly. But you didn't give me the chance to find out. You went straight to deception and betrayal. Mom appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted. The reporters are asking about family statements. They want to know if we support you, or if there's some deeper conflict here. What do you want to tell them? I asked. The truth, Mom said firmly. That we're a family that's made mistakes, but we're committed to fixing them. That we support you completely and we're proud of what you've built, even though I kept it secret from you. Especially because you kept it secret from us, Dad said, joining the conversation. It means you did it entirely on your own merit. We can't take any credit for your success, but we can't diminish it either. Madison wiped her eyes. I want to make a statement too. I want to take full responsibility for what I did and make it clear that Debbie is the victim here, not the perpetrator. Madison, that could seriously damage your legal position, I warned. The FBI might use your statement against you. I don't care. I've already destroyed my relationship with my family and potentially your entire company. The least I can do is make sure the world knows you're not the bad guy in this story. Before I could respond, Sarah knocked on the doorframe. Boss, there's been a development. James Morrison is here. He's asking to speak with Madison. My blood went cold. The last person I wanted to deal with today was my ex-boyfriend, especially if he was here because of Madison's pregnancy claims. Send him in, Madison said before I could object. James walked into the room looking exactly like I remembered him. Tall, confident, devastatingly handsome in that prep school way that had attracted me in college. But now, looking at him with 10 years of perspective, I could see the self-absorption and entitlement that I'd been too young to recognize before. Madison, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. We need to talk. About what? Madison asked, though her face suggested she knew exactly what. About the fact that you told 3 different people yesterday that you're carrying my child, when we've had exactly 0 physical contact in over 4 months. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by concern for Madison's increasingly obvious mental state. I never said the baby was yours, Madison said weakly. You strongly implied it. And now I have reporters calling my residency program asking for comments about my relationship with the sister of a tech mogul who's under FBI investigation. James's professional calm was slipping. Do you have any idea how this affects my medical career? I was confused, Madison said, starting to cry again. I've been under a lot of stress. Are you even pregnant? James asked bluntly. I took a test. It was positive. When? Last week. James pulled out his phone. I'm calling Dr. Sarah Chen at the women's clinic downtown. She's a friend from medical school. She can see you this afternoon for a proper test and exam. That's not necessary, Madison said quickly. It's absolutely necessary. If you are pregnant, you need prenatal care immediately. If you're not pregnant, you need to stop telling people you are. James looked at me for the first time since entering the room. Debbie, I'm sorry you're caught up in this mess. For what it's worth, I had no idea about any business information or FBI investigations until I saw the news this morning. I believe you, I said. Madison, you're going to that doctor's appointment. Today. I can't afford a doctor's appointment. I told you. I'm broke. I'll pay for it, I said. But we're settling this pregnancy question right now. Sarah appeared in the doorway again. Boss, I hate to interrupt, but we have a bigger problem. Someone leaked details of your family's financial situation to the press. The foreclosure notice, your parents' medical bills, your sister's debt. It's all over social media. Who would leak that information? Mom asked, horrified. Someone with access to financial records, Sarah said meaningfully. Someone who's been digging through private family information. All eyes turned to Madison, whose face went white. I didn't sell family financial information, she said quickly. I would never do that. But you had access to it, I said, the pieces clicking together. When you were going through my computer, you found the records of all the payments I've been making for Mom and Dad. I might have mentioned to someone that your family was struggling financially, Madison said slowly. I thought it made you look more sympathetic, like you were supporting your parents out of kindness, rather than just showing off your wealth. Who did you mention it to? Sarah asked sharply. A reporter. She called me yesterday asking about family dynamics. She seemed really nice and understanding. She said she wanted to tell a balanced story about successful people who don't forget their families. Madison, I said very quietly. What reporter? Jenny Walsh, from Business Today magazine. She said she was doing a feature on young entrepreneurs and their family relationships. Sarah was already on her phone, pulling up articles. Boss, Jenny Walsh has been writing hit pieces on tech companies for 2 years. She specializes in finding personal scandals that can damage business reputations. And you gave her everything she needed to destroy me, I said to Madison. I thought I was helping, Madison whispered. I thought if people knew how generous you were with family, it would make you look good. You thought wrong, Sarah said bluntly, showing us her phone screen. The article goes live in 2 hours. Tech mogul's secret fortune built while family struggled in silence. It paints you as a selfish daughter who hoarded wealth while your parents faced cancer and bankruptcy. The betrayals just kept coming. Every time I thought we'd reached the bottom of the deception and manipulation, Madison found a new way to make things worse. That's not how it happened, Mom said fiercely. Debbie didn't know about our problems because we hid them from her. Try explaining that after the narrative is set, Sarah said. Once this article publishes, you'll be fighting an uphill battle to restore your reputation. Then we don't wait for the article, I said, standing up. We hold our press conference now. We get our version of the story out first. Boss, are you sure? We haven't had time to prepare proper talking points. I don't need talking points, Sarah. I need honesty. Set up the press conference for 1 hour from now. Family only. No lawyers, no PR spin, just the truth. James checked his watch. I should go. This isn't my family crisis to manage. Actually, I said, would you be willing to stay for the doctor's appointment with Madison? As a medical professional, not as whatever you two used to be. I think she needs an advocate who understands healthcare. James looked surprised by the request, but nodded. Of course. Dr. Chen can see us at 2 o'clock. As people dispersed to prepare for the press conference, Madison caught my arm. Debbie, I know I've ruined everything, but I want you to know that I'm going to fix this. I'm going to tell everyone that you're not the villain here. Madison, I appreciate that, But I need more than apologies from you now. I need you to commit to real change. What kind of change? Therapy, job training, taking responsibility for your own life instead of expecting everyone else to solve your problems. And most importantly, no more lies. About anything. Ever. Madison's face crumpled, but she nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. Good, I said. Because after today, our relationship starts over from scratch. No more family history giving you a free pass to treat me poorly. You earn my trust back through your actions, not your promises. As I headed upstairs to prepare for the press conference that would define the rest of my career, I realized that everything I'd been afraid of losing was already gone. My family's trust, my privacy, my carefully constructed boundaries between personal and professional life, all of it had been destroyed in the space of 24 hours. But instead of feeling devastated, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete honesty. For the first time since I'd started my company, I didn't have to hide who I was or manage anyone else's feelings about my success. In 1 hour, I was going to stand in front of cameras and tell the world exactly who I was: a daughter, a sister, a business owner, a woman who'd made mistakes and been hurt by the people she loved, but who was still standing and still fighting for the relationships and dreams that mattered to her. It was terrifying and liberating and absolutely necessary. The press conference was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Dozens of reporters crowded into our makeshift media area on the front lawn, cameras rolling as I stood with my family behind a small podium Sarah had arranged. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'm here today with my family to address the events of the past 24 hours and set the record straight about some inaccurate reporting. I talked for 20 minutes, explaining the full timeline from my perspective: the hidden success, the family financial struggles I hadn't known about, Madison's unauthorized access to my business files, and the complex family dynamics that had led to this crisis. My sister Madison is struggling with some serious personal issues, I said, looking directly at the cameras. Her actions were wrong, but they came from a place of pain and desperation that our family failed to address properly. She deserves consequences for what she's done, but she also deserves compassion and support as she works to make things right. When I finished speaking, the questions came rapid fire. Miss Chen, do you feel betrayed by your family? I feel disappointed by some of the choices that were made, but I don't feel betrayed by my family as a whole. We've all made mistakes in how we've communicated and supported each other. Are you concerned about the impact on your company? My company employs over 200 people and serves healthcare providers across the country. Our work is too important to let personal drama interfere with our mission. We're implementing additional security measures and moving forward with our planned expansion. What's your message to other entrepreneurs who might be dealing with family pressures related to their success? I paused, thinking about the answer that would have helped me 3 years ago when I first started hiding my achievements from my family. Success doesn't eliminate family dysfunction, it just gives it more resources to work with, I said. If you're keeping your achievements secret to avoid dealing with family issues, you're not protecting yourself. You're just postponing the inevitable reckoning. It's better to address problems directly while you still have some control over the narrative. After the press conference, Madison, James, and I drove to the medical clinic for her appointment. The car ride was silent, but it was a different kind of silence than the tense hostility of the previous evening. There was exhaustion, but also a sense of relief that the pretending was finally over. Dr. Chen was professional and kind, taking Madison for a private examination while James and I sat in the waiting room. She's not pregnant, is she? I asked quietly. Probably not, James said. The timeline doesn't work, and some of her symptoms sound more like stress and poor nutrition than pregnancy. Why did you agree to come today? You don't owe Madison anything, and being involved in this situation can't be good for your reputation. James was quiet for a long moment. Because I see patients like your sister every day in the ER. Young women who are overwhelmed by life and making desperate choices because they don't know how to ask for help properly. She needs medical attention, not judgment. I looked at him with new respect. The self-absorbed boy I dated in college had apparently grown into a man who genuinely cared about helping people. For what it's worth, he added. I always wondered what happened to you after graduation. When I saw your company mentioned in medical journals, I was proud to know you. I'm sorry it took a crisis for me to tell you that. Before I could respond, Dr. Chen emerged with Madison, whose face told me everything I needed to know. Not pregnant? I asked gently. Madison shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Chen says, I'm severely anemic and malnourished. My period stopped because my body is stressed from not eating properly and living on credit card debt anxiety. The positive pregnancy test? James asked. False positive from a cheap drugstore test, possibly influenced by the anemia, Dr. Chen explained. Madison needs proper nutrition, stress management, and probably some counseling to address the underlying issues that led to this health crisis. As we drove home, Madison was quiet until we were almost back to the house. I've been lying about everything for so long that I started believing my own lies, she said suddenly. The pregnancy, the relationship with James, even some of the business information I claimed to have. I wanted so desperately to be important and valuable that I convinced myself these fantasies were real. Madison, when did this start? The lying, the desperation to be important? I think it started in high school when you got into state, with that full scholarship. Everyone kept talking about how proud Mom and Dad must be, and I realized that I was never going to be the daughter who made them proud academically. So I became the daughter who needed them. If I couldn't be the success story, at least I could be the one they worried about and focused on. The insight was heartbreaking and revealing. Madison had built her entire adult identity around being the family member who required the most attention, even when that attention was negative. But somewhere along the way, needing attention became more important than deserving it. I said, yeah. And when I found out about your company, I realized that you'd managed to become successful without any help from them, while I'd become dependent on them without becoming successful. It made me feel like such a failure that I wanted to hurt you the way I was hurting. We pulled into the driveway to find Sarah waiting with an update. Boss, the FBI investigation is moving quickly. They've determined that no proprietary information actually left your systems, and they're recommending that Madison be charged with attempted corporate espionage rather than the full crime. If she pleads guilty and makes restitution, she's looking at probation and community service rather than prison time. What kind of restitution? I asked. Paying for the security consulting and crisis management costs. Probably around $15,000. I looked at Madison, who was staring at the ground. I don't have $15,000. I don't have $1,500. I'll cover the restitution, I said. But, Madison, you're going to pay me back through work, not promises. You're going to earn every penny. What kind of work? Community service, for starters. The kind that helps other people instead of just helping yourself. And therapy. Real therapy. Not just a few sessions to satisfy the legal requirements. And after that? After that, we'll see who you are when you're not lying to yourself and everyone else. Maybe there's a person under all this deception who I'd actually like to have as a sister. That evening, as news coverage of our family crisis continued to play on every local station, we sat around the dining room table for the first, honest family conversation we'd had in years. I want to make some changes, Mom said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. I want to start family therapy, all of us together. Not because the court requires it, but because we obviously don't know how to communicate with each other. I'd like that, I said, but I also want some individual boundaries. Madison, you're not welcome in my home unsupervised until you've completed therapy and demonstrated sustained change in your behavior. Mom, Dad, I love you, but I'm not going to keep enabling financial irresponsibility. If you need help, ask for it directly, instead of manipulating situations. What about the house payments? Dad asked quietly. I'll keep making them, but we're refinancing in my name only, and you're going to pay me rent based on your actual income. No more co-signing agreements without my knowledge. No more using my credit for things I haven't approved. And Madison's debts? Mom asked. Madison's debts are Madison's responsibility. I'll help her create a payment plan and maybe provide some part-time work opportunities, but I'm not paying off credit cards that she ran up living beyond her means. Madison nodded, looking more clear-eyed than she had in months. I understand. I need to fix my own problems instead of expecting everyone else to fix them for me. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a folder Sarah had prepared. I'm setting up a family trust fund. Not for handouts or emergency bailouts, but for genuine opportunities. Education, business startup costs, medical expenses that insurance doesn't cover. But every disbursement has to be approved by an independent trustee, and there are strict accountability requirements. Why? Dad asked. After everything we've put you through, why would you do that? Because you're my family, and I love you. But love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. It means providing support in ways that encourage growth and responsibility. As the evening wound down and the reporters finally left our street, I found myself sitting on the front porch with Sarah, reviewing the day's events. How do you think this will affect the company long-term? I asked. Honestly, I think it might help. The story is getting picked up nationally as an example of family dynamics in the age of tech entrepreneurship. You're being praised for your transparency and your commitment to both business ethics and family responsibility. Singapore loved the press conference. 3 other international firms have reached out about potential partnerships. And Madison? She starts therapy next week. James referred her to a psychiatrist who specializes in young adults with family dysfunction and financial anxiety. The legal situation should be resolved within a month if she sticks to the plea agreement. I leaned back in the chair, feeling emotionally drained but oddly hopeful. Sarah, do you think families can really change? Or do people just go back to their old patterns once the crisis passes? I think it depends on whether they're changing because they have to or because they want to. Your family seems motivated by genuine regret and love, not just fear of consequences. That's a good foundation for real change. As Sarah gathered her things to leave, she paused at the front steps. Boss, for what it's worth, I think you handled today perfectly. You protected your business, held your family accountable, but you didn't abandon them. That takes a lot of courage and wisdom. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet evening air, thinking about everything that had changed in just 48 hours. I'd lost the privacy and careful boundaries I'd spent years constructing, but I'd gained something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The ability to be completely myself with the people I loved. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about managing my family's reactions to my success, because they already knew the worst and the best of who I was. There were no more secrets to protect, no more careful conversations to navigate, no more energy wasted on hiding parts of myself. Tomorrow, I would wake up as a daughter, sister, and business owner whose life was messy and complicated and completely authentic. And somehow, that felt like the biggest success of all. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of our newly expanded headquarters, looking out at a team that had grown to over 300 employees. The Singapore acquisition had been completed successfully. Our artificial intelligence technology was being used in hospitals across 4 countries, and Forbes had named our company one of the fastest-growing healthcare tech firms in America. But the real transformation hadn't happened in the boardroom. It had happened around my family's dining room table, week after week, as we learned how to actually talk to each other. Madison had been coming to family therapy religiously, and the change in her was remarkable. She'd completed her community service at a financial literacy nonprofit, helping other young adults understand debt management and budgeting. More importantly, she'd started college again, studying social work with a focus on family counseling. I want to help other families avoid the mistakes we made, she'd told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings. I want to understand why families create these destructive patterns so I can help break them. She was paying me back for the legal restitution at $50 a week from her part-time job at the nonprofit. It would take years to repay the full amount, but seeing her make each payment on time felt more valuable than the money itself. Debbie, she'd said last week, I know I can never undo the damage I caused your business and your trust, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud to be your sister, even if I don't deserve to be. Mom had completed her cancer treatment successfully and was now volunteering as a patient advocate at the same hospital where our AI technology was being implemented. She'd found purpose in helping other families navigate medical crises without the secrecy and shame that had characterized her own experience. "I realize now that we taught you girls to hide your problems from us," she'd said during one therapy session. "We hid our own struggles, so you learned that family members don't share difficulties with each other. That was our failure, not yours." Dad had found work with a construction company that specialized in accessible housing modifications. The pay was less than his previous job, but he'd discovered a passion for helping disabled and elderly people maintain independence in their homes. "I spent so many years defining myself by my income," he'd reflected. "I thought being a provider meant making money. Now I understand that providing for your family means being present and honest, not just financially successful." They were paying rent on the house now, a modest amount that reflected Dad's new income. It felt good to have that relationship be clear and honest, rather than hidden behind elaborate financial arrangements neither of us fully understood. As for me, the crisis had forced me to confront my own patterns of avoidance and control. In therapy, I'd learned that keeping my success secret hadn't just been about protecting myself from my family's drama. It had also been about avoiding the vulnerability that comes with sharing your whole self with the people you love. "You can't control other people's reactions to your success," my therapist had explained. "But you can control whether you allow their reactions to define your worth or dictate your choices." I'd started speaking publicly about family dynamics and entrepreneurship, sharing our story at conferences and in interviews. The response had been overwhelming. Hundreds of business owners had reached out to share similar experiences with family members who struggled with their success. "You gave me permission to set boundaries with my family without feeling guilty," one entrepreneur had written. "Your story helped me realize that loving someone doesn't mean enabling their destructive behavior." The company had thrived through the transparency. Rather than damaging our reputation, the crisis had demonstrated our values and our commitment to ethical leadership even in personal difficulties. Our client base had expanded, our employee retention had improved, and our company culture had become stronger. Sarah had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer, and we'd hired a full communications team to manage the media attention that continued to follow our success story. But more importantly, I'd learned to trust my team with both professional and personal challenges. "Boss," Sarah had said during my performance review, "the crisis taught all of us that we're not just working for a tech company. We're working for a leader who handles adversity with integrity and who values people over profit. That's why our retention rate is so high." This morning, I was preparing for a very different kind of family gathering. Madison was graduating from her first semester back in college with a 3.8 gigapascals. Mom and Dad were hosting a celebration dinner, and for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited to spend an evening focused on my sister's achievement. "Are you nervous?" I asked Madison as we walked into the restaurant together. "Terrified," she admitted. "It's weird being proud of myself for legitimate reasons instead of just creating drama to get attention. How does it feel different?" "It feels sustainable. Like I can keep building on it, instead of having to constantly create new crises to maintain interest." She paused. "And it feels honest. I don't have to remember what lies I've told to whom." During dinner, Madison presented each of us with a letter she'd written as part of her therapy homework. "These are my amends letters," she explained. "Not apologies, because I've apologized enough. These are commitments, promises about how I want to show up differently in our family." Her letter to me was 3 pages long, detailing not just regret for her actions, but specific plans for rebuilding trust and contributing positively to our relationship. She'd included a timeline for paying back the restitution, goals for her education and career, and a request for monthly check-ins to maintain accountability. "I want to be the kind of sister you're proud to have," she'd written, "not because of what you can do for me, but because of who I am and what I contribute to your life." Mom and Dad's letters were equally thoughtful, acknowledging their role in creating the family dynamics that had led to the crisis, and outlining their commitments to more honest, supportive relationships. "We want to be parents who celebrate your successes instead of managing our own insecurities about them," Dad had written. "We want to be people you choose to share your life with, not people you feel obligated to manage and protect." As we finished dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from James, who had become an unexpected friend over the past few months. He'd been supportive of Madison's recovery without getting romantically involved, and he'd occasionally reached out to me to check on our family's progress. "Saw the Forbes article about your international expansion," his text read. "Congratulations on building something amazing. Hope you're celebrating tonight." I smiled, realizing how different this felt from the phone call that had started our family crisis 6 months ago. Tonight, there were no secrets, no hidden resentments, no careful management of anyone's feelings. There was just a family that had learned to love each other honestly, even when that love was complicated and imperfect. "What are you smiling about?" Madison asked. "I'm just thinking about how much has changed since my birthday disaster. Do you regret how it all happened? The crisis, the publicity, all the pain we went through?" I considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. The invasion of privacy, the business risks, the family betrayal, it had all felt like unnecessary damage that could have been avoided with better communication. But looking around this table at my family, really looking at who they'd become and who I'd become through the process of rebuilding our relationships, I realized that the crisis had been the catalyst for changes that never would have happened otherwise. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. I regret that we let things get so bad that a crisis was necessary to wake us up. But I don't regret the outcome. We're better people, and a better family, because we were forced to face the truth about ourselves. Even with everything it cost you?" "Madison, what did it really cost me? Some privacy I was using to avoid intimacy? Some family relationships that were built on pretending and enabling? Some illusion of control that was actually limiting my ability to be authentic?" I paused, thinking about everything I'd gained. The crisis took away things that were holding me back, and gave me things I didn't even know I wanted. A family that knows and supports who I really am. A business that operates with complete transparency. Relationships based on honesty instead of careful management. And what about the $10 million you could have lost if the Singapore deal had fallen through? I laughed. "Madison, money is just a tool. It's useful for creating opportunities and security, but it's not a measure of success by itself. I'd rather have $10 million and a family I can be honest with than $50 million and relationships built on secrets and resentment." As we prepared to leave the restaurant, Dad pulled me aside. "Debbie, I want you to know that your mother and I are prouder of how you handled this crisis than we are of your business success. The money and the recognition are impressive, but watching you maintain your integrity while holding us accountable for our failures, that showed us who you really are." "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. We've learned something important from you. Success isn't about avoiding problems or protecting yourself from difficult people. It's about facing challenges with honesty and courage, even when that's harder than hiding or controlling situations." As I drove home that evening, I thought about the entrepreneur conference I was speaking at next week. My talk was titled, "Building Success Without Sacrificing Authenticity: Lessons from a Family Crisis." I plan to tell the audience that the biggest risk to long-term success isn't business failure or market competition. It's the gradual compromise of your authentic self in service of maintaining control and avoiding discomfort. The most successful people I know, I would tell them, aren't the ones who've avoided family drama or personal crises. They're the ones who've learned to navigate difficulties with integrity and use challenges as opportunities for growth, rather than reasons to build higher walls around their private lives. But tonight, I wasn't thinking about business advice or conference presentations. I was thinking about how good it felt to love my family without reservation, to be proud of my sister's genuine achievements, to share my successes without worrying about anyone's reactions. I was thinking about how grateful I was that my assistant had called me boss in front of my family that night 6 months ago, because that awkward moment had set in motion a series of events that transformed all of our lives for the better. Most of all, I was thinking about the life lesson that had emerged from our crisis. Real love means holding people accountable for their best selves while supporting them through their worst mistakes. It means being honest about problems, instead of enabling dysfunction. It means choosing courage over comfort, growth over stability, authenticity over control. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I was exactly who I wanted to be: a daughter, sister, business owner, and community member who didn't have to hide any part of herself to maintain relationships or success. That was worth celebrating. And tomorrow I would call my family to plan another dinner. Not because anyone was in crisis or needed help, but because I genuinely enjoyed spending time with these people I'd learned to love honestly. Have you ever had to choose between protecting your privacy and being authentic with the people you love? How do you balance success in your career with healthy family relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about navigating family and career challenges, and share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing about our journey from secrets to authenticity. Thank you for listening to our story, and I hope it encourages you to choose honesty over perfection in your own relationships. Remember, the most successful life is one where you can be completely yourself with the people who matter most.